Vanishing point, how Carly's off-road mystery could reshape Port Charles. Logline. When a late-night detour on a lonely country road ends in a wreck with no driver found at the scene, Port Charles is forced to confront a chilling question. Is Carly Spencer missing because of an accident, or did someone engineer the perfect disappearance? In the vacuum she leaves behind, old truces crack, hidden loyalties surface, and a quiet, ruthless game begins, one that stretches from marshy backroads to the most powerful rooms in town. The turning of the wheel. It begins with a choice that feels innocuous. Carly, restless and tired of second-hand updates about everybody else's crises, takes a weekend drive out of Port Charles. She wants distance from the noise, a few hours with the windows down and the radio too loud, the kind of impulsive freedom she has always managed to seize, even when life is determined to carve her down to the bone. The backroad she chooses is the risky kind, no lights beyond the pale wash of moon, no service for miles, and a knotted canopy of trees that turn every bend into a blind curve. It's a route she picks precisely because no one will bother her there. It's also a route someone else expects her to take. The wreck without a witness. By dawn, a fisherman notices tire tracks carving into cattails where the shoulder collapses toward a shallow creek. Farther in, half-submerged and mud-streaked, a vehicle crouches at an angle that suggests violence without spectacle. There is no fire, no dramatic plume, only the quiet tap of water against warped metal. First responders arrive long after the moment that would have turned fear into relief. There's no driver inside, no purse, no phone. Only smeared fingerprints on the passenger window and a scattering of glass that implies a struggle happening either seconds before impact or in the stunned silence after it. The report is sterile, scene secured, airbags deployed, partial blood evidence, driver unaccounted for. But the implications are anything but sterile. Carly's name carries gravity, her disappearance creates not merely grief but strategic instability. Before the police have finished stringing tape, the news passes through Port Charles like a groan beneath the floorboards. A city holds its breath. Jocelyn's reaction is immediate and unflinching, she refuses to perform for anyone's benefit. She wants action, not platitudes. Michael goes colder, wielding calm like a weapon while he catalogues every loose end that might connect to his mother's fate. Sunny silence, heavy, haunted, and angry, becomes the storm center. Even those who dislike Carly feel the drop in barometric pressure. Nina watches from a self-constructed exile, caught between the urge to help and the knowledge that any misstep will be judged as opportunism. Ava, who recognizes a staged tableau when she sees it, studies the photographs, the angles, the quietness of the scene, and decides that accidents don't always read like this. Theories, timelines, and tells. If Carly walked away from the crash, how far could she have gone before disorientation or injury stopped her? Why was there a faint, second set of tracks that never reached the waterline but melted back toward the road? Who pulled the dash cam, and why were there hairline scratches on the glove box latch? Each question births three more, and each answer strips away one more comforting illusion. The working hypotheses branch. Accidental survival with flight ***. Carly, concussed, stumbled away and flagged help that never made it into the official chain. Extraction ***. Someone reached her first, either to save or to claim. Coercive disappearance ***. The wreck is camouflage for abduction, or protection, or both. The lab is slow to clear the partial blood match, the creek water contaminates everything. That delay becomes the opening a smarter enemy needs. The first aftershocks. In Carly's absence, the alliances around Sunny become brittle. Every routine decision suddenly looks like a raid on empty space. A petty skirmish at the docks nearly becomes a siege when unfamiliar foot soldiers test boundaries, whispering that Port Charles leadership is destabilized. Diane sharpens her legal knives, just in case. Brick cross-references camera dead zones near the crash site with a burst of encrypted phone pings far outside the city's usual traffic patterns and finds an anomaly that isn't random. Meanwhile, an anonymous package lands on the police desk, dashcam video from a trucker who passed that same stretch an hour before the wreck. Most of the footage is static and night wash, but for 13 seconds a pair of headlights lingers in Carly's rearview. They keep their distance too perfectly. ## Jocelyn's line in the sand. Joss remains the pulse of the search. She pinballs between the station house, the crash site, and the kind of online forums that devour missing person cases for breakfast. When official channels hesitate, she makes noise, enough of it to force movement. She organizes a ground sweep that unearths a plastic binder sleeve snagged in a branch along the creek, a sleeve that once enclosed maps. The accident narrative shrinks further. Jocelyn refuses to participate in anyone's tidy conclusion. Her insistence becomes a gravity well of its own, pulling friends and uneasy allies into orbit. ## Sonny's shadow play. If Sonny believes Carly is alive, he doesn't say so outright. He changes patterns, small ones most people won't notice. He posts watchers at the hospital corridors that matter, and at a particular clinic outside city limits that rarely makes the news. People in his world start waking to quiet knocks at 3 a.m. and questions that feel like cross-examinations. He is not hunting for vengeance first, he is hunting for verification. If someone staged a crash to remove Carly from Port Charles, then someone is already moving to reshape the territory she anchored. He intends to know their names before they know he knows. ## The evidence that isn't. As the days spool, the case generates less hard evidence and more persuasive absence. There is no charge on Carly's cards, but there is a cash withdrawal 3 hours before the wreck, small enough to slide under every threshold. There are no medical admissions under her name, but a private chopper requests fog clearance from a rural pad the night of the crash. The hospital reports no unidentified female patients, yet a supplier invoice shows a backordered blood product delivered off-cycle to a facility that does not admit emergencies. Each non-answer builds the scaffolding of a theory. Carly has been moved, possibly for her protection, possibly by force, and someone with resources is laundering the trail in real time. ## The phantom patient. Rumors leak because Port Charles is porous by design. A nurse mentions a phantom patient routed through a private wing with curtains drawn and charting done by hand. A driver mentions a 2-car exchange under a bridge favored by smugglers because it eats sound. A groundskeeper mentions a woman in a borrowed coat walking like every step is a negotiated truce with pain. None of these witnesses can offer a face, but together they begin to draw the silhouette of a living person in motion. ## Ava's pattern recognition. Ava has never been sentimental about clues, she is brutally pragmatic. She lays out photos from the last 3 years, vanishings, staged scenes, miraculous returns, and waits for the recurring signature to reveal itself. It is not just violence or coincidence, it is choreography. The same hand, or the same school, has been at work before. The more she looks, the more she suspects this is not a single actor's project but a consortium's, multiple interests using the accident as cover to settle their individual accounts with Carly's influence. ## The quiet war at GH. Hospitals in Port Charles are less sanctuaries than crossroads where law, crime, and family collide. Terry keeps the medicine above the fray, but that doesn't stop the corridor whispers. A private security badge appears at a nurse's station it has never visited before. A visitor log goes missing and then reappears with a page replaced. Curtis's crew clocks 2 unfamiliar faces riding the elevator to a floor that should be empty after visiting hours. Someone is treating this as a hostage negotiation without announcing the terms. ## Echoes in the Spencer web. Bobby's legacy hangs over everything, her fierce insistence on survival, her refusal to let the worst day define the next one. In Bobby's memory, people who loved Carly in the sunshine find themselves doing brave, stupid things in the dark. Trina, who has learned the hard way how to stand steady in chaos, steadies Joss. Michael leverages corporate pressure in places where paper trails become leverage. Brooke Lynn uses soft power in hallways where a smile opens more doors than a badge. The Spencer ethos becomes the city's current: don't flinch, don't fold, don't wait. ## The breadcrumb that bleeds. At last, a sliver, a partial lab match confirms that the blood in the vehicle is consistent with Carly's type and markers, but not fatal in volume. It's a paradox that matters, enough to explain shock, not enough to explain a body that never surfaces. Paired with the dashcam headlights, this turns missing person into active interference. The case designation changes, so does everyone's posture. Port Charles stops praying for a rescue and starts preparing for a confrontation. Hashtag what a Carly-shaped absence does to power. Carly has always been more than a name, she is an arrangement of pressures, on Sunny, on her children, on rivals and reluctant allies. Remove that pressure and systems swing wide. People who resented her steadiness miss it. People who coveted her reach discover they don't know how to carry the weight of what they grabbed. The coffee business, the Metro Court's quiet diplomacy, the web of informal favors, each begins to wobble, and the wobble creates noise that makes it easier for a hidden hand to move without being heard. Hashtag the countermove. Sunny, refusing to be maneuvered, sets a trap at the place where logic says the opposition must cross, a private transfer corridor used for VIP patients who don't want to be seen. He doesn't announce it. He lets the rumor of Carly's critical stabilization exist just loudly enough to tempt a second extraction. Cameras, watchers, redundancies, exits mapped to the inch. What he's really hunting is not a person but a method, proof that whoever took Carly is confident enough to escalate under pressure. If they come, he learns them. If they don't, that silence is its own admission. Hashtag the moral mathematics. Everyone pays a different price for Carly's absence. For Jocelyn, the cost is belief, she must keep faith without proof. For Michael, it is restraint, not burning bridges he may need to cross again in a week. For Sunny, it is patience, in some ways the most expensive thing he can spend. For Nina, it is learning the difference between help and intrusion. For Ava, it is accepting that recognition without evidence is still only a hunch. For Port Charles, the price is simple, the city loses its equilibrium, and equilibrium is what keeps small tragedies from becoming catastrophes. Hashtag if this is rescue, why is it cruel? The most unsettling hypothesis is the one nobody wants to say out loud. What if someone spirited Carly away because they believed it was the only way to keep her alive? What if the cruelty is a side effect of the cure? That possibility reframes enemies as saviors and friends as liabilities, and it makes every next step ethically treacherous. You can't declare war against a rescue mission without risking the person you're trying to save. Hashtag what comes next. In the weeks ahead, the search narrows from geography to intention. Less where is she, and more, who benefits from keeping her unseen right now. Expect breakthroughs that feel minor, a receipt that shouldn't exist, a maintenance log that explains a grounded helicopter, a florist bill to a clinic that swears it has no patients, and then the one break that turns every disparate clue into a single, blazing line. When that happens, the city will hold its breath again, not in dread but in anticipation, because if Carly is alive and being moved like a queen on a chessboard, the move that brings her back will redraw every boundary at once. Hashtag why this story matters. Port Charles thrives on the premise that survival is not merely possible but inevitable if you are stubborn enough to insist on it. Carly is a stubborn person. The wreck on a backroad is not just a plot catalyst. It's a test of what the city becomes in the absence of one of its gravitational bodies. Do people reach for power or for each other? Do they grow sharper or smaller? In that sense, the accident is less a cliffhanger than a mirror, it shows everyone who they are when the room goes dark. Hashtag the promise and the threat. The promise, somewhere, there is a hand on Carly's shoulder saying not yet, not like this. The threat, the hand belongs to someone who thinks they know better than she does what her life should cost. Port Charles will fight the threat and chase the promise, and when they finally collide, the impact will be felt in every orbit, from the kitchen at the Metro Court to the quietest room in the hospital, from the docks to the chapel where desperate people light candles for outcomes they can't control. Carly's story has never been about caution, it has always been about momentum. Even in absence, she accelerates the people who love her and terrifies the ones who don't. Whether the hazard was random or designed, whether the disappearance is a kidnapping or a grim kind of rescue, one truth remains: when Carly Spencer returns, And Port Charles will operate as if that's a when, not an if. The city she steps back into will not be the same one she left. It might be more fragile. It might be freer. It will certainly be ready to burn brighter, because nothing illuminates Port Charles like the moment a survivor walks back out of the dark.